Good evening, everyone. How are you? Welcome to tonight's session. First off, welcome, Gonzalo. How are you? Uh, Guys, please reply in the comments if you can hear us good and if you can see us good. All right, just make sure that the mic is working. Please go to the comments and just tell us if you can see us and if you can hear us properly. All right. Let me check if the comments is on. All right, we're on. I'm not sure if the comments are enabled on YouTube. Gonçalo, podes confirmar aí se os comentários no YouTube estão enabled?
I don't think so.
Guys, just give us a second. We're going to enable the comments on YouTube. Give us a second. Anyways, I guess you can hear us properly. Gonçalo, consegue me ouvir bem?
Yeah.
All right, guys. We're going to try to enable the comments on YouTube shortly so that you guys can comment and ask any questions. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to go straight to business as fast as we can. First off, how is this going to work in terms of our relation with you guys? As soon as we have the comments on YouTube enabled, we're going to ask you guys you can watch freely, you can ask your comments freely, any questions that might come up, please write it down. And as soon as we finish some topics, or as soon as we finish the presentation, we can go through all of your questions, and we can go one by one or to the most interesting questions, and you can answer them. So feel free to ask anything. You can write it in the comments as soon as it's enabled, and then we'll answer it in the end. So first off, guys, why is me and Gonçalo here? Why are we talking about this? I'm guessing a lot of you guys know us, but a lot of you guys don't know us. So we're gonna make a quick presentation, very quick. My name is André. I've worked in professional sports for more than 15 years. I've worked with professional handball, professional futsal, some years in football as well. I worked in Sporting in Benfica. Guys, I'm guessing the comments are already on, so you can comment just to see if everything's okay. So I've worked in professional sports, and throughout my career, of course, I've used GPS tracking devices, whether it's indoor, because I worked with handball, whether it's outdoor, and we felt this need to create the system, to work with the system that everybody has available now. So together with Gonçalo, because Gonçalo has worked in professional sports for the last 7 or 8 years, he's working in the first division in Portugal. Now he's working in Tigres in Mexico, also first division. And we've been working together to create develop here an idea of some of the GPS variables so that we can bring this to you guys. So we have a lot of experience, more or less, in professional sports. And we've had some experience with GPS, and that's why we're talking about here today, because there's a lot of stuff that you can take out of GPS trackers. Everybody has them available, and it's not very consensual what we can take out of it. So we hope that this class at least brings some light onto this, and hopefully works or helps you work better tomorrow, or make you have a more clear idea of which variables you should be controlling, which is the topic of today's class. All right, Gonçalo, you want to say something, or we can start?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I'm very glad that we can have this kind of interaction with everyone, as we have our own community, and we try to give all the support to everyone and learn from each other. So in the end, that's it. And we are here to share a bit of our experience and how the guys that are making, especially the first steps into this business, can have this upper end and take some leverage from our own mistakes in the end.
Exactly. All right, guys. Again, feel free to the comment section is working, so you can ask your questions or everything. We're talking. We'll stop. Every time we finish a topic, we can stop and check your questions and answer them.
I think the chat is still. Unavailable.
No, but there's guys already talking here.
Okay, right.
So I guess everything's okay. Anyways, guys, let's go here. So straight to business. Gonzalo, I'm just gonna take yours off. See you in a minute. There we go. Just me now, guys. Okay. GPS and training load management beyond volume variables. So the idea here today is to talk a little bit about the main variables that we should be using on our GPS, and of course the main goal is to go beyond volume variables. That's the whole name of the topic, because everybody knows that we're going to track total distance, high speed running, sprint distance. A lot of it might be shady to some of you guys, and we're going to try to bring this to you, see how we can work with the main variables that everybody already knows, and let's try to explore some of the other variables, like the meter per minute, or the number of accelerations per minute, or the worst case scenarios, which is beyond the basic volume variables, and how we can use this to enhance and to make better use of our GPS trackers. Again, guys, I'm getting a couple of messages here. If you're not working if the comments section is not working, please refresh your page. And as soon as you refresh your page, you're going to be able to post something in the comments. All right. So first off, which are the most useful variables? Then we're going to talk a little bit about arbitrary versus individual variables. We'll go into this a little bit. Then you're going to talk about the actual variables that you want to talk about today, which is going to be volume-based variables, instantaneous intensity variables, period-based variables, and the most intense periods, which we're going to see with Gonzalo, because most intense periods are period-based variables. It's similar, but they have some particularities that we want to see a little bit more in depth. Okay, so this is going to be always the problem as soon as you get a GPS tracker in your hand. Where if it's indoor, if it's an LPS, if it's a GPS, you're going to have this problem. Actually, most of the GPS providers, they sell this idea that they have a million variables that you can take out of them. Obviously, the most basic is going to be total distance, then the distance in speed zones, accelerations, decelerations, and various acceleration and deceleration zones, the number of impacts. You have composite variables like the player load, the high metabolic load distance. You have number of dives for goalkeepers, number of jumps. You have composite variables, because some of the GPS providers, they allow you to mix variables together and create new ones that you may think are useful. So actually, if you take this into account, there's literally an infinite amount of variables that you can take out of your GPS tracking devices. Now, you won't be able to look at everything, and what you want to be doing is look at what matters, because otherwise, if you have everything and if you have a dashboard with everything, you'll end up looking at nothing, and you won't make decisions based on it. And this is a goal of what we want with GPS trackers. It's similar to what we want with athlete testing. You want to test because you want to make decisions based on the result of the testing. You want to check your GPS tracker and the numbers that come out of it, because you want to make decisions based on it. This is the goal of the GPS tracker, because looking at the numbers and just stating how much each athlete ran at the end of the session. Oh, this guy ran 7 kilometers. This guy ran 5.5. It means nothing. What we want is to check: did he run too much in comparison to what he was supposed to be running? Did this drill have the right intensity? Was this this training drill was supposed to mimic match intensity? Did it do it? This is what we want out of our GPS trackers. We want to make decisions. We want to evaluate everything that we do in the session, everything that players are doing, and we want to make decisions to change for the next sessions or for the next week. And this is basically what we're going to talk about here today. So we're going to put our little variables into some boxes. We're going to talk about volume variables, so how much each athlete ran in each speed zone, and of course the total distance. So total distance, high speed running, sprint distance. Of course, you can make up literally any speed zone that you want. You can go for 10 to 15, how much an athlete ran from 10 to 15, from 15 to 20, 20, 25, 25 above. What you can create your own zones, but we need to have a consensus here if we're going to compare between each other for the variables that the athletes are running. So you're gonna have the same thing for running distance, and you're gonna have the same thing for accelerations and decelerations. They can also use speed zones, but you're gonna or acceleration zones, but you're gonna go into that in a little bit. And we're gonna use one arbitrary variable, which is the volume above 90% of maximum speed. But again, we'll go into that in a little bit. Then we're going to talk about period-based intensity variables, which is the total distance covered by the number of minutes of the drill or exercise. Same thing for accelerations and decelerations. Then we will go into instantaneous variables, which is going to be the maximum speed, maximum acceleration, and maximum deceleration. And then Gonzalo is going to talk to you about the most intense period. So we can stay here all night arguing if these are actually the right variables to control everything. These, for now, are ones that are very useful and very practical. We're open to argumentation or to discussion to see if there's something that may make sense. We know there are a lot of coaches, they like to look at high metabolic load distance. They like to look at player load. They like to look at more arbitrary variables. All of this is useful, but you need to focus on something. We're going to talk about these ones today, which is, on our opinion, the most important and the ones that help you make the most decisions. But of course, all of this is arguable, and we're still learning and we're still developing the system. So before we get into the variables themselves, we're going to talk about arbitrary versus individual variables. Arbitrary variables are arbitrarily set speeds or acceleration thresholds used to define different speed zones. Okay, let's say when you talk about high-speed running, it's most of the GPS providers, they will give you 19.8, between 19.8 and 25.2. Some GPS trackers will give you between 20 and 25. So it's different speed zones. It's the distance you cover in different speed zones. All of this is set arbitrarily. All right. But we can also do it individually. Instead of doing a same speed zone for everybody, we could do, for instance, a percentage of an athlete's maximum aerobic speed, or a percentage of the athlete's anaerobic speed reserve. What's the difference between one and the other? The arbitrarily set zones, or the fixed zones, let's say the distance that an athlete ran above 20 kilometers per hour, allows us for comparison between drills, between teams, and between athletes. I know the output of an athlete, right? I know that that guy ran 100 meters of high-speed running, or that in the game he did 350 meters of sprint distance. If we do individual variables, if we look at individual variables, let's say we're going to use 100% of maximum aerobic speed as a threshold, then I don't know the actual output of the athlete, because one guy may have his maximum aerobic speed, or his MAS, he may have 17, another one may have 15. So the advantage of the individual variables is that we can actually control more for internal load, right? So we know more or less specifically to that athlete what was asked of him in that drill or in that game or in that exercise, but we cannot compare in between them. So both of them are useful, but in terms of output comparison, if you want to analyze your drills, your team, or your athletes, it makes more sense overall to use arbitrary zones. If you have, like we know that some clubs have enough human resources to have a double module where you can use arbitrary zones and you can check for individual zones as well, of course, this would be ideal, but let's face it, guys, that's not the reality for most of us. So we're going to go for mostly arbitrarily set zones, and we're going to use one individual zone, which is going to be the 90% of maximum speed. As you can see here, there's a study where they try to this is a review study where they analyzed many studies that were using individual zones, but again, it's the same as arbitrary zones. There is not a real, finished consensus that tells us, which are the ideal zones that correlate the most with injury or correlate the most with performance output. So we're still trying to find this out, right? Anyways, I guess it's pretty basic for everyone that above 90% of maximum speed is something that everybody wants to use. Okay, let's talk about volume variables. Let's go down to business, now that we disclaimed all of this. So volume variables are metrics that quantify the total amount of physical work performed by a player, typical measured over a session, a match, training period, without necessarily considering the intensity or effort level. So we're going to put our high-speed running, number of accelerations, number of decelerations, all inside this box of volume variables. The first one is going to be obviously the total distance. I'm not going to go too much in depth into each of these variables because you guys have a nice little ebook that you can check in our group. I'm guessing all of you guys are in the group. You can check in the group description. You can download the ebook. There's normative values for games for each position. You can check all of this. It's in the ebook, so I'm not going to go too much in depth with each of the variables. What I'm going to try to do is try to see how can we use this to make real life based decisions. So total distance is pretty obvious. It's the cumulative distance a player covers during a match or a specific period or a training session. It serves pretty much as a fundamental measure of a player's workload. All right. Then we have total distance is like the distance that the athlete covered inside that exercise or match. Then we have high speed running, and here it's where it starts to get a little bit shady, because some providers classify high speed running as 19.8 or above 19.8 and below 25.2, which is going to be 5.5 meters per second and 7 meters per second. Some other providers will provide you with above 17. There is no consensus, but there's a couple of slides above here. There was an article by FIFA trying to consensualize or try to make make this uniform so that everybody uses the same speed zone so that we can compare. And they were using speed zones 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. And when we talk about high speed running, we're going to talk about speed zone 4, which is going to be, it's the same that we're going to use to classify here, between 20 and 25 kilometers per hour. And sprint distance, we're going to use above 25 kilometers per hour. So high speed running, it's the distance covered at speeds between 20 and 25. Indicates, of course, high intensity running efforts, reflects the player's ability to perform high intensity speed runs. It's important to understand that above a certain threshold, in this case 20 kilometers per hour or 25, we're working with a different motor program. There's different muscular recruitment. It's a different type of exercise than just normal running. All right, so this is something that you want to look at to see if the athletes can give us this high speed running. You know that fullbacks are going to have higher high speed running numbers and higher sprint distance numbers than central defenders. So this is something that this will differentiate the athletes. We also know that this differentiates between leagues. There's studies showing that the big 5 leagues have higher high speed runnings per match, high speed running values per match than leagues below the big 5. So this actually is a variable that can differentiate performance in between teams and in between athletes. Also, both high speed running and sprint distance, which we're going to classify as above 25 kilometers per hour, are different motor programs than just normal running, and it's something that we want to control for acute chronic load. So this will tell us the output of an athlete. This will tell us if the exercise has the number, is producing the numbers that we want in terms of these variables. But this is something that we might also want to compensate for, because we know that a lot of athletes, if the exercise has all of the players in it, sometimes some players don't get exposed to these variables, to these higher speed distances. So sometimes you have to compensate. You have to add some extra work at the end of the session. So we want to control the acute chronic load of these variables, because it's a different motor program than just running around, right? So in terms of speed zones, we can argue I think there's some discussion now that's running zone, what FIFA classifies as zone 3, which would be between 15 and 20 kilometers per hour, is something that we should account for. But then all of this is arguable, and we're going to check if we're not going to include this one today, but again, we're open to discussion. We're going to include, in terms of speed zones, normal total distance, high speed running, and sprint distance. These are the zones suggested by FIFA. You can check the article online. There's the link there. And I guess it's pretty useful. This comes from an article also as well from a guy called Bradley. The article was published in 2024. We can give you guys that in the end of the session if you want. Okay, this would be it for speed zones for the distance covered. Now we have the number of accelerations and number of decelerations. So the issue here with this is that some providers, they only allow you one threshold. So normally it's going to be either 2 meters per second square or 3 meters per second square. All right. If you have a provider that allows you to have thresholds, the same thing that you have for high speed running and sprint distance, if you can have number of accelerations between 1 and 2 meters per second square, between 2 and 3, between 3 and 4, that would be ideal. But if you have to choose one, then we would go for 2 meters per second square. It's again, this is arguable, but we would go for 2 meters per second square if you have to choose one, which is one in between. If I'm going to choose 4 meters per second square, then I'm going to have too little accelerations and decelerations. It's going to be at the higher end of the threshold. If I'm going to have only 1 meter per second squared as a threshold, then it's going to give me a lot of accelerations and decelerations for all of the athletes. So you want a threshold that's actually representative of the effort that the athlete is having. So if you have to choose one, we would suggest 2 meters per second squared or 3. Of course, all of these accelerations and decelerations, you can compose it in one variable. Sometimes on our systems or on our spreadsheets or on our dashboard, sometimes you use a composite variable, which is the number of accelerations and decelerations together to create another variable. So which is the sum of both, to check, for exercises. Sometimes it's easier to add to a visual representation. Okay, so we got these two, and these would be the basic volume variables. Then we have the last one, which is the arbitrary one, which is the distance above 90% of max speed. Why? Because we want to make sure that athletes are exposed at least once per week to 90% of their maximum speed, right? It's something that they're probably going to do in the match, and we want to make sure that they're exposed to it, that it's not a new type of effort that they stay more than 2 or 3 weeks without doing. So this is something that we want to cover, that we want to control, to make sure that they have some accumulation of volume above 90% of their max speed. This is something that normally coaches try to do at least once per week or once every 10 days, expose athletes to this. So again, it's something that we want to control. Okay, let's go for what really matters. Okay, I don't think I've said something new for any of you guys now, but how can we use this, right? Again, if I get the numbers, if I look at the numbers at the end of the session, oh, this guy ran 5 or 6, or the average of today's session was 5 or 6, it's useless, because what I want to do is compare the average of these volume variables, or the individual of these volume variables, against what was supposed to be done that day. Either using a planning microcycle, so we can plan the microcycle in each of the variables, and we want a certain specific number of output for each variables for each day of the microcycle, or against the average of what has been done in the microcycle, in that type of microcycle, whether it's a -2, -3, -1, whatever. So you have an example here of how we work, of our system. You see the gray bars is what was planned. We planned for this is match day +1, this would be day off, then you have match day, I'm in the first one, in the total distance. Then you have match day -4, -3, -1, and the gray bars are what was planned. And the colored bars are the total distance against what was planned. The yellow one is the high speed running, the red one is sprint distance, and the blue one is accelerations plus decelerations. So what we can see here, for instance, is that for total distance in match day -3, we did a little bit below what we were supposed to be doing. So this means that for the next day, we can actually add some distance. And this would be the same for any other of the variables. So what you want with these volume variables is to compare what was done, what was performed, against what was planned or what was expected. So we need to devise a plan for the week, and then you see if everything fits together. If it doesn't fit together, then you might rearrange it for the next days. This is the actual use of these volume variables. Then you can use it individually, but again, just looking at it individually makes no sense. What you want, as you can see on our dashboard here, what we want is to compare what was performed against that little yellow dash there. You can use the yellow dash as 2 reference points. One of them, you can use the average of the -3 or the average of the day type. Let's say for every -3, what has this guy been doing? Because you know that some guys are going to run more than others. You don't want the same for everybody, right? Fullbacks are going to run more, or wingers are going to run more. Maybe central defenders are going to run less. This is pretty obvious. You want to compare athletes between themselves. You want to be seeing, is this guy at his normal level or not? Or you can actually plan individually for him, and you set the number for -3 for all of the different athletes, and you compare what was performed against what was expected. So this is the same thing. This would be on a team level, and this would be on an individual level. Same thing for sprint distance and accelerations and decelerations. Here is an example of acute chronic load. Hey guys, I know this is a little bit complex. It's a lot of numbers and colors, but the idea is you want to have a dashboard that allows you to be color-coded for each of the variables, and that gives you a little insight into acute chronic load of the last week for the athletes. So you're comparing the 3 former weeks against what was performed the last week, and see if there's a high variation in volume or not. So, sorry guys, I see there's a lot of answers, a lot of questions here. Gonzalo is actually answering if you want to go to the questions. I'm going to go on, but we can stop in the end to see all of your questions. Anyways, you want to have a nice little dashboard that gives you insight into acute running load of the volume variables. You want to see if the guy is lacking on this last week, he's doing a lot less of high-speed running, and maybe even it's planned. Maybe you want to deload the athletes because you don't have the games that week, but you want to have this under control because you don't want to overload 1 week in comparison to the other 3 or 4 before that one, because again, this is going to represent higher risk for injury. So you want to have a dashboard that allows you to have this decision to check if you want to, up or top up high-speed running or sprint distance or make it lower. Another thing that you can use, very interesting for volume variables, is you can plan the session. This is a very simple dashboard here when you put the names of the drills on one of the sides, and it will, of course, you have to map some of the exercises before. You cannot have this available at the beginning of the session unless you've worked with the same system before. But what you can use this for is you can map the exercises, and then the coach says, okay guys, today we're going to do this and that. This is going to be 10 minutes, this is going to be 20 minutes. And then what you do is you do a preview of the session, and you can already check the preview of the session if it's going to match what was expected for that day. So this is how you use volume variables. So the coach is saying, this is what you're going to do. You know what's expected in terms of volume. You know what's expected for the match day -2. And you check, okay, coach, let me put this here. You input all of the exercises. And then as you can see here, then this example in high-speed running and in sprint distance is way, way above what was planned. So we want to match here the 100%. But these exercises are going to give us a lot of high-speed running and allow us sprint distance. So we can actually give this feedback to the coach and say, hey, we need to change this exercise. Either the characteristics of the exercise or the duration of the exercise, because you don't want to, go way above or way below what was expected for that day. So this is basically in practice, how do you account for volume variables? Again, looking at the variables and presenting a nice little graph with all of the colors and everything makes no sense. You want to make decisions based on it. And the example that gave you guys here were a couple of decisions that you can make based on volume variables. As for instantaneous intensity variables, they represent the highest single moment values of performance metrics. Normally, we're going to go for the three basic ones, which is going to be maximum speed, maximum acceleration, and maximum deceleration. There's a couple of main practical uses out of this. First, of course, we're going to compare in between athletes, right? So I'm not going to go into depth. You guys understand maximum acceleration, maximum deceleration, and maximum speed. And this is pretty straightforward. What we want to use we want to use maximum speed because you want a threshold of 90%, and you want to see if the athlete attained that threshold or not for a session. So this is an example of a practical use to make decisions on that athlete for maximum speed. You can compare in between athletes. So we have maximum speed here. This is just a basic example. This is a more straightforward comparison between athletes. You have here the maximum speed, maximum acceleration, deceleration. Of course, you want to have an idea of how fast your athlete is, because if you want to put him in some position, or if you want to have some different or higher demands out of him, then you want to check which one is the fastest, which one is the slowest. Of course, this is something pretty straightforward to take into account. But another pretty good use that is not that obvious is going to be the return to play. Right, so this is again an example of a nice little return to play report where you can actually have on a daily basis what was accomplished. And what you want to make sure, for instance, is before the athlete is ready to play, you want to make sure that he attained at least 90% of his maximum acceleration or deceleration. Of course, this is right before he goes back into play with his teammates or back into competition, but throughout the return to play process, depending on the type of injury, you want to make sure that there's a gradual return to maximum speed, maximum acceleration, and maximum deceleration. So this is not obvious use, but it's a pretty useful use of the control that you can take out of maximum acceleration, maximum deceleration, and maximum speed. You want to make sure, for instance, in the return to play progress, that everything is done gradually. So in this dashboard here, you have the number. This would be accelerations and decelerations. So the blue is acceleration, and and the orange is deceleration. But there's a little square which is the percentage of his maximum. So this is what was done in comparison to his maximum. So you see that it's 84%, 88%, and of course what you want in the return to play process is to have gradually reached 95, 100% before you make sure that he goes back to competition. Okay, now really let's go beyond the volume variables and let's look a little bit into something that we think is pretty useful and that we feel that not everybody uses. Let me just check some of the questions here. Before you go into this, are we going to talk about weekly targets for the individual or targets for certain? Edwin, we are not going to talk about this today, but we might give you some insights into this. We might talk a little bit about this. I'm going to see the ones in English. Does it make sense to use thresholds for high velocity running for all athletes, because some athletes might represent a relatively low percentage of their maximum speed? Luis, I guess I covered this when I talked about the difference between arbitrary variables and individual variables. None of them is perfect. Of course, you're going to have the problem that you just described, but if you're going to check for both, if you cannot choose one of them. Either you go for arbitrary ones, which are more useful, or you go for both. And going for both means a lot of work and a lot of variables to link into, and sometimes not all of the teams have enough resources for that. Okay, I guess Gonzalo's answer here. Using the variables, how do you conclude the training load? What the training load needs to be? Okay, Riz, this question is similar to the question that Edwin was asking, which is how do you distribute the load throughout the week? I'm going to go over this a little bit in the end, but this is not part of the topic of today, but we can go into this a little bit at the end. All right. I'm going to finish here before I give the word to Gonzalo. Let's talk a little bit, finally, beyond volume variables. So period-based intensity variables help identify the average physical demand per unit of time. So you normalize the intensity of each exercise. They can highlight the density or the effort of a duration of a specific period. You can go for 1 minute, 3 minutes, and 5 minutes, whatever. The important thing here is now I'm going to talk about total distance per minute, accelerations per minute, and decelerations per minute. So we're going to normalize everything to 1 minute. And then there's some particularities for worst case scenarios, which is going to be 3-minute intervals, 5-minute intervals, whatever bigger time intervals that Gonzalo is going to talk about. So this basically reflects how intense the activity was on average. So if I have two guys running 5 kilometers, but one team did that in 30 minutes or in 45 minutes, and the other team did that in 1 hour and a half, you know that the one that did this in 45 minutes had a much more intense training. And you want to make sure that the intensity mimics match intensity, because if you train at a low meter per minute for over the session, and then you expect players to play at a high meter per minute, that's not going to happen. So you can just look at volume variables and say, okay, they did 7 kilometers today. But if they did not do it sometimes in a short period of time, which is what happens in the match, then you're not preparing them for match intensity. And this is a very useful variable, whether if it's for total distance, for acceleration and deceleration, it's a very important variable to take into account. So total distance per minute, again, I was just explaining its practical use. Helps in assessing the intensity of a player's activity. It's very useful for comparing between training drills or in relation to match demand. So, of course, in the training drills, this is useful. Why? Because let's say you want to create a training drill that mimics match intensity, or that goes 20% above match intensity, because match is 90 minutes. Of course, when you create a drill that you want to be intense, you cannot mimic what's happening in 90 minutes because 90 minutes is too long of a time. So sometimes if you want to have hard drills, you know that they need to be 20, 30% above game intensity. So this is the references that you want to use. And you can change the variables of the exercise, change the dimensions of the pitch. You can ask players to go from, let's say you're working with a possession type of drill, all right? You can, use the river type drill. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this, that when the ball goes to one side, the whole team has to change the pitch. The whole team has to change their part of the pitch, and they have to move from one side to the next. So this actually, you're creating conditions in the drill that will force athletes to be running, to have a lot of distance coverage between and the number of minutes that you allow for each of the exercises. Again, this would be analogous for accelerations and decelerations, so it's the same thing. So total distance covered, number of accelerations and decelerations. How do you use this practically? This is what he was saying. In your dashboard, in your report, you don't want to just look, okay, this is just the intensity of the session. This is already useful because you want to make sure that sessions are intense, but you want to look at it in comparison to what has been done and in comparison to the game. And you can see here on the left-hand side of this small dashboard, you have the total distance per minute of each of the sessions. And what you can look at is you have that yellow dash, which is, you can use this either as what you were planning for that session or what has been done in all of the average of all of the, let's say, the -3. So you can see here in the total distance per minute on the -3, the intensity of the session, of the whole session, was a little bit below what has been done in all of the -3. So we know that in the next week, the next -3, you want to up. All right, you want to up that intensity by creating some different drills, by including some more, some more distance covered in between each drill. You can change the conditions of the exercise to make decisions based on that. So we're taking this number and we're making a decision out of it. All right. On the right-hand side, there's going to be the worst-case scenarios with comparison to the average match and to the session type. But Gonçalo is going to go into that in a minute. Still on the left-hand side, you have a composite variable of accelerations and decelerations, and you can see that there was a type of exercise. These are fictional numbers. This is fictional data, but you can see in this data here that it was above what was expected. So if the goal was to go above all of the -3 before, then the goal here was achieved. Okay. Another thing that you can use is you can create a dashboard that has specific drills, and it has the description of the drill. So you can see the examples of the drills here. You can see the total distance, the percentage of the match, for example, and you can see, I think it's the fourth variable. It's the match per minute versus, it's the meter per minute of the drill versus the match meter per minute. And what we can see here, you see 71%, 77%, 74%. You can see that these drills were not very intense, okay? Because let's say maybe it was the goal of that day. We don't know. But let's say that you have a -3. You want it to be your most intense session. You want to be using drills, possession type drills, whatever, pressure type drills that have high intensity. You're not going to do it for 90 minutes, so you know that the intensity needs to be above match intensity. So if this was the goal for today, then the goal was not met. So again, you're using these variables against references, and you need to create these references to check if this was good or bad. Just stating numbers and looking at the numbers with no reference, you don't know if it was good or bad. You don't know if you matched what was planned or not. So this is a way that we hope makes sense to you guys, that you can check for each specific drill and use the intensity, the meter per minute, and the accelerations and decelerations per minute to check if the drill matched what was expected out of that specific drill. Because sometimes you create a new drill and you have no idea if the drill had the right. Sometimes it looks nice because they're having fun, the ball is running around, but then physically it didn't have the same intensity, or it didn't have the intensity you were looking for. So this is something that you want to take into account. Another thing, obviously, is going to be the match report. This is just an example of a simple match report. And what you have, let's just go for the lowest part there. You have the intensity variables, total distance per minute, high-speed running and sprint distance per minute, and accelerations and decelerations. This was what was the first block was what was performed on first half, second half, and total. And then you have some colored spaces. All right, this is the key here, because these colored spaces are the percentage of what was performed by the whole team in the first half, the second half, and the total against your average match. So you can see, for instance, that on the second half, you did 20% more total distance or 19% more total distance than you did in your average match. But again, this is volume-based variables. Some matches are 91 minutes, some matches are 98 minutes. This is going to make a difference. You want to look at intensity. So if you go below here into the intensity square, you can see, okay, my team today was in the average of what was expected for the match, or they were all below average, or they were all above average. And you use these color coding ideas. Again, you have a reference, which is your average match numbers, and you use the intensity variables to check if it was above or below your normal match intensity. All right, another example you can do this for individual athletes. So you have here, it's the nice little square. So this is a performance of the athlete on the last 5 games. All right, and you can see not only the total distance as well as the number of minutes played, because you want to check if you're looking at total distance of 91 minutes against 99 minutes. Obviously, it's going to be different, so you need to take this into account. But you want to look at the meter per minute, and you want to look if that athlete is improving the meter per minute, if it's maintaining the meter per minute, if it's dropping the meter per minute. Of course, sometimes it's not all performance. If you get a guy and you change in position, and if you ask something new out of him, you want to see if it's corresponding to what you're supposedly asking out of him. So again, this is a nice little dashboard where you can take this variable, this intensity variable, and compare it to check if the goals are being met or not. All right, I'm gonna share. Let's see. Let me just see a few questions here. When designing MII exercise, do you create one, for example, that hit TD and accelerations plus decelerations, or do you make one for each metric? I'm not sure if you're named Faz. I guess that, of course, some drills are going to focus more on accelerations and decelerations. Some drills are going to be more for total distance. If you have wider pitch or wider field drills, they're going to run more. They're going to have less accelerations and decelerations. If you have possession type exercises, of course, they're going to have more accelerations and decelerations. Some you can create mixed exercises that target both of them, or you can actually create. Some coaches, they do. Let's say they do a -4 normally, that is more focused on short distances, on more accelerations and decelerations, and then they do a -3 with wider exercises that focus more on total distance. It depends on the coach. Some coaches want everything in the same drill. Some coaches want to divide it to work on the specifics, but there is no right answer here. I am going to pass the word on to Gonçalo. Let me put him on here. And I'm going to go here. There you are, Gonçalo. It's all yours.
Okay. So just tagging along with the summarizing part of the question that there were on the comment section, I will have to say a little bit on the arbitrary versus individual threshold when you use the above 25 kilometers per hour, or if you should use 90% of max speed to consider high speed running or so. You have to figure out that it's two totally different aspects of measurements. You cannot visualize that as the same question. So the question is not the same. When I'm talking to a coach, and if the coach is asking me if my player is fit, if my player is going to develop himself, is he improving physically, or if he's too exhausted, I would go more to individual variables such as 90% of max speed. So if I know that my player didn't reach 90% of max speed in the last 2 weeks, I would consider, okay, this is an alarm, and I have to figure out why he has not been doing above 90% of max speed. But remember, if that player, for instance, was a player that was very fast, is 36 kilometers per hour, and he was still topping above 1K, 1,000 meters on above 25 kilometers per hour. So on the absolute thresholds, that player would be outstanding and would still consider as being formidable, very well into performance. However, you can dive into knowing that that player can give you more or is not achieving his very best. But that's an individual analysis, and actually it's not related to the whole team performance. Because when you go for absolute thresholds, what I want to answer is a comparison performance. And I have to compare apples with apples, because if imagine this scenario, I say, okay, I have two players, one that is the 36 kilometers per hour and the other one is 30 kilometers per hour. And I'm saying, this my player that performs 36 kilometers per hour doesn't have any speed at above 90% of max speed. and I'm going to refer that. And I say, okay, you know that this guy is doing 0 meters at individual high speed running. But if I go dive and say that the other one that is topping 30 kilometers per hour as max speed and is doing 100 meters of high speed running above 90% of the, per hour, in the end, I'm actually saying to my coach that the player that is worse, performing worse as an overall measurement, absolute threshold, um, would be individually better. So that creates a confusion. That is not a good message in the end, because in the fact is that the player that runs at above a threshold compared to the other, it is a pure fact. So if I want to go to the pitch, I would rather have my players going in absolute values above the opponent than just them being almost maxed out. They are very intense relative to themselves, but when we compare to the match, they are quite low. So different questions on that end. So again, moving on to the different topic of the most intense periods and worst case scenarios, which Andrea already dived into a bit. So they have several names, because when you search on internet, you can, and on research articles even, you can come up with several acronyms for the same thing. So most demanding period, most intense intervals, worst case scenarios, peak period. So these are all the same thing in the end. There are two very different ways to measure. So in short, they represent those short periods that we want to measure. Usually, these moments decide match outcomes. So if we go search on video when these moments happen, it was some running in behind, some transitions. So they are usually linked to some the most demanding events, which will be an expected goal at least occasion. So take into consideration that we sometimes live for these moments and we have to train for these moments. Again, we can see from different time periods, from 1 to 15 minutes, depending a little bit what our question is. And there are two very different ways to assess it. So basically, the most known ways is a rolling average, which basically over the course of the time, we're gonna try to find which was the highest peak. So I'm saying, imagine that I'm looking for the 61-minute period. What I'm gonna do is like roll over the whole time, and I see it from the beginning to the end. This was the highest peak. This can be, for instance, at 15 minutes 32 seconds to 16 minutes 32 seconds. But if we go for fixed epochs, what does that mean is that I break down the timeline into minutes. So I have the 0 to 1, the 1 to 2, the 2 to 3, the 3 to 4. So I don't do this rolling. That's the word for it, right? So there is a big difference between them. So basically, every time you do rolling, you're gonna have the true value, and if you go for fixed epochs, you're gonna underestimate the values. This is important because there are usefulness in both methods. Some are useful to really find the most demanding period, but the others can be used into a more individual training approach and also match understanding how the match is going on. So I'm gonna talk to that just in a second. So as I said, match aren't played as a contest intensity, so the games are won or lost during those critical periods. There are a couple of articles already mentioning this, and understanding, preparing ourselves for this kind of intensities is very important, as we just saw in Excel how we can measurement and how we're gonna apply this into live data. So besides we know the peak, so I have a peak period, which I don't know, whereas we can see here in these numbers, we see on green dots 197, 192, 152, 206, 169. So these are the peak periods. So this is the highest meter per minute that a player achieved during the match. But the question is also, how many times did this player achieve these moments? Because I can have a player that really performed, as we have here, 244 meters per minute as the peak, but he only had two occasions that he actually did a very demanding scenario. And then we have here the volume, for instance, where we say between 150 meters per minute and 175 meters per minute as a threshold we have in volume. So I know that this first player on my left has performed 11 minutes above 150 meters per minute during the match, and 3 minutes above 175 between 200. So this leads me to a better understanding of the overall match demand in high intensities. If we go for that guy that has the highest level of meter per minute, the highest peak is 244, you can see that he only reached actually 2 times that value. So in the end, this could lead us to a very anaerobic player that is not so exposed to high intensities all the time. And the type of training that we have to do it over the week is very different. Again, this is all good discussions that you can have with the head coach and other fitness coach that work with you to fully understand the profile of your player. But what we want to bring out with this graph right here is that not focusing only on the peak value, but also on the volume, how many times do he has to perform during the match. So over the week, you can see also in the volume relation to intensity, how many times do I have to expose my player to this kind of intensities. So it will give you a better glance of how we should train the players. And in an individualized approach for this, what also we recommend is try to identify the the overall how we can progress with him over the match. So in this table right here, what we did in the end was, okay, using fixed epochs as we just said, and how here I'm using 5 minutes fixed epoch. So I broke down the match over 5 minutes, and I'm going to see per player. So I have like usually a print table where I see how my players are, how every row is a player and how is the average that they usually do over the match. And here I can just look to the GPS live and look to these numbers. I can see and attach like if my player is doing above the average of his own average, below the average, and I progress over the match. So usually I see, okay, I'm on the 5 minutes mark, my player is doing 500 meters. Okay, I know that the meter per minute over there is around 100. I know that he might be below the average. And what usually I do is I check if it's only one player or if it's the whole team. Because if it's the whole team, could be more tactical reasoning. But if it's only one player and the other ones are topping, might be some other factors that I want to ask me about. So I want to see if my player physically okay, is being not so exposed, is the ball not going so to that end. So why is my player underperforming? Meanwhile, the rest of the players are overperforming. So for instance, this is a very easy takeaway message that using 5 minutes fixed epochs, I can have an insight during live data with the match. So I can tell my head coach, or I can tell my assistant coach, so he has that into consideration. Look, this player is not performing at his very best compared to the rest of the team. Always having into the context also in mind, of course. So don't look only to the numbers without looking what is happening on the match. That would be a criminal, in my belief. But at least that will give you an alarm. And here, so basically you can transfer this between match and training. So in the end, you can identify the different demandings per position, per players in the position. In my example, I have very different players that play in the same position, and I know that they're gonna give me different things physically. So this is always a good topic of discussion between the coaching staff. So if we want to use this player for this kind of match or the others, imagine if I'm playing with a high block, I need players that have better top speed because they might have to be running behind. So that can be something into consideration. Or different strikers. If I want a striker that is much more doing pressure, so he would need to do much higher meter per minute blocks. to keep up some high pressure. But if we want to just play with a striker that is fixed on the box, he will not have so many meters per minute, so the physicality of the player would be very different. So these, again, are very good questions and discussions that we can have with the coaches using this kind of data from the worst case scenarios. That was it. Let me check if there is any questions out there. Andre? I think not.
Turkey, acho que não.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Guys, Gonçalo, posso?
Yep.
Guys, well, this is it for today's class. I hope at least that you enjoyed and that you took something out of it. But of course, we want to present you something that we've been working on the last couple of months. Actually, we've been working on this because there was a lot of you guys asking for this, a lot of people asking for us to create a GPS course. A lot of you guys don't know us. We already teach a lot of courses. We have a lot of online courses here in Portugal, but now we decided to create a new one based on a GPS volume metrics and GPS metrics and a GPS training analysis. And this is something that we've been working on the last couple of months. So we created this new course. It's called GPS and Training Goal Management course. And basically, it's going to cover all of what you see here and more in detail. We've been where most of the people, at least where some of the people are now. We've been in the club with the GPS tracker in hand. We put it in the player. We look at the dashboard at the end, and we don't make decisions out of it. We just look at the numbers. Hey, this guy ran this guy ran that. There was no decisions made based on it. And what we tried to create, what me and Gonçalo have been working on and creating on the last few months, is our new GPS and training load management course that is not related to any specific provider. So independent of your provider, you can use our system. And we created a system that allows for decision making, which is actually what we're looking for here. Just looking at the numbers and doing the same thing on the next day makes no sense. So all of what I've been talking about, all of the decisions I've been talking about, all of what Gonçalo was talking about, how to make an individual analysis, how to make a team analysis, this is all covered for in our new GPS and training load management course. It's a fully online course created just with the intent to take the most, take all of the juice out of your GPS tracker, whether you have one with many variables or one with low variables, whether you have one that has nice dashboards or no dashboard or not so nice dashboards. We created our own dashboards in Excel and Power BI, so you won't be dependent on the limitations of your GPS provider. And this is something that we've been working on, and we're to be honest, we're kind of proud of it. And I hope that the guys, if you guys want to go into the course, that you enjoyed it as well. So this is the name of the course, is GPS and Training Load Management. It's designed for coaches, for performance staff, for analysts. Some physiotherapists might want to look into it because you want to have an idea when you're doing return to play, because on some clubs are the physiotherapists are the ones that take care of the return to play process. We have all the dashboards available, and above all, we try to create a framework. So it's not only get the numbers, look at the numbers, try to create a framework where you make decisions based on what you see. Again, we have all of the modules here, but to be honest, I'm gonna share my screen and I'm gonna show you the course from the inside. Gonçalo, estás a ver o meu ecrã?
Yeah.
Okay, guys, this is the course. Actually, this is the inside view of the course. You have around 30 classes where you have module 1, where we're talking about how to use the equipment and how to decode the metrics, similar to what we've been talking about today, but of course on a much more in-depth analysis of subjective variables, displacement variables. Guys, some of you were talking about reference and weekly load distribution. We have a whole class on how you can create your references, how you can distribute the load throughout the week, throughout the -2, -3, what are you supposed to do in each of the days. So we cover all of this in our first module. Then on the second module, we have a couple of classes where you can learn how to build your data foundation, how to export from a GPS provider, how to create your Excel. All of the templates that we were showing you during this class are available here. But of course, you have access to this, but we don't just give you the Excel. We teach you how to use it. We teach you how to create your own so that you can adapt to your own needs. We teach you how to create all of the databases here. You can see create the references, weak link program. All of this is broken down into a lot of detail. You can create your, this is module 3, you can create your performance insights. How? By creating nice reports that actually give you the visualization that you want. Session report, match report, return to play report, individual performance report, acute chronic load report, and again with Gonçalo, the Power BI part of the course, where you can use all of this in Excel, but you can also take the data from your Excel and explore the Power BI that has a little bit different in some other functionalities that might be useful for your environment. And we did a final module where there's a class which I think is one of the most important classes, which is called the typical day, which is how you go into the club. How do you use your dashboard? How do you use your numbers? What do you do when you get in the club? How do you do the session preview? How do you do the acute chronic load? How do you talk to the coach? How do you present this to the coach? What decisions are you going to make for that session based on what the coach told you what the session was going to be? What decisions do you make at the end of the session for the next few days for the match? So all of this is broken down in all of these classes. Of course, one of the most important things, and we've been doing this for all of our courses, is first thing is you have access to us all of the time. You're going to have if you decide to acquire the course, you'll have a WhatsApp group and you'll have a forum where you can ask your questions, ask your doubts. You have access to us and you can ask any problems that you may have. We'll help you out as soon as we can. So it's a living course. We'll be doing updates because all of this information is, it's changing very quickly. It's changing a lot of time, and just giving you a course and then give you the course and then buy, and then when you have any problems or when you have any issues with the dashboards or with the Excel or with the Power BI, you have no help. No, this is not what happens here. We are available to change what is needed to be changed. We will send updates as soon as they're done or as soon as they are required. You already have a couple of updates, like version 1.1 and 1.2 until the end of the year, which is going to come out probably. So this is the first version of the course, and we're working on all of this so that the course is, you feel like it's a living course, right? So you have access to us, you have access to all of the information. You can ask for updates because as we had with our courses before, we had a lot of guys asking, okay, we need a class on this specific topic. I don't know, velocity-based training. And what we did, we went to the course and we created a new class and a new Excel dashboard for velocity-based training. So the course goes hand to hand with your needs and with everything that you might need. So this was a breakdown of all of the modules, but going into what you need, you have the Excel available, you have the editable Power BI available, you have the private support for doubts and questions, and of course you have a certificate of completion. It's a course that grows at your field. I already told you this. This slide's here is just not to forget anything because we keep giving you the updates. And of course, what everybody's asking right now is the price. This is the launch day. So this is the first launch of this course. So that's why the price is a little lower than usual. We're selling the course for 287 euros if you acquire it today. If you, the 15 first people that acquire the course today will have access to a private mentorship a couple of 4 weeks from now, I guess, where you can now also ask a lot of questions and we can help you out with your private practice. Me and Gonçalo will be in that class. So first 15 people to acquire the course today will have access to this. Guys, if you have any questions, you can scan this QR code to go directly to the page, where the landing page of the course. I'm going to share it here as well, but there's something else that I want to show you. Here you are. I'm going to share it here. There you go. There's something else that I want to show you guys. I want to show you the inside view, more or less, of, for instance, of the Excel dashboard. So you have the athlete ID here. So this is a lot of the valuable. Sorry, I have to share the screen here. Sorry, guys. Sharing screen sharing. Estás a ver o meu coisa, Gonçalo?
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So this would be the folder for the athlete ID. Then a lot of you guys are asking for the references. This is what we have here. You have the references based on match performance, and you can basically go here and for each of the match days, let's say for match day -5, -4, -3, you can provide a percentage of your match performance so that you can have as a reference. So what you can do here is you can come here and change all of this according to what the way your coach works or the way that you think you should be working, and all of this is going to be used as a reference for your match day. So for the guys that were working asking for the references, this is how we do it. Of course, in the course, everything is broken down on a step-by-step basis. You have access to this, but we also show you how to create it. But you have access to this and you can start using it immediately. We also teach you on the more theoretical part how to properly distribute, because of course you don't want to have much more than, if it's a summer 4 days of training or 5 days of training, you don't want to have much more of 200 or 230% of match in relation to match of total distance. You don't want to have too much of 100 to 150 of high speed running and sprint distance. So all of this is taught in the theoretical part, and this here is taught in the practical part, how you can distribute the load. What does this do? Then you start filling in your databases. You have databases for goalkeepers, for field players, match databases, drill databases, and of course your subjective database. You'll have a wellness report here. Everything, you just have to fill in the data and the report comes out. You just have to press print and the report is ready to print and send to the coaching staff or to the medical staff. But then what you would be wanting mostly would be the session reports, where everything that we were showing you, you can check all of the individual sessions here. You can change the session. Let's change a week. This is a different week, right? You can change all of this. The only thing you have to do is fill in the data, check the session here, and start making the decisions based on what you see. So we have goalkeeper report. Again, this is, you can plan the week right here. Let's say I want to change the week here. Let's say that I want this would be a -3, let's say, and day -3. You change this here, and then of course what happens is that you can see that it's going to change the reference here, because Saturday is going to be an under -3, which is wrong, of course, but this is how the dashboard is set up to work. It's pretty straightforward, very easy, and very easy, very useful above all. Again, as soon as you're done, you press Control P and all the report comes out. Match report, same thing. Acute chronic load ratio that you can see to check if the athletes need to top up or not, or which athletes might be more fatigued. You have a return to play report where you can actually check the time interval, where you can check for each of the days that the athlete is doing return to play. Individual report, something very useful that we were showing, which is a session report. You can put the drills names here, all of the drills, and you check more or less the preview of the session, and then you can ask the coach. Let's say the coach wants to do 40 minutes of this, but then it's too much. Then you can put here 20 minutes, and it already changes everything, and you can see if it fits to what was planned to that day or not. This more or less is a breakdown of the course, of everything that's inside. I want to send the word to Gonçalo here. Gonçalo, you might want to share your screen to show you the Power BI version of the report. Guys, you can take a look. Gonçalo, consegue partilhar aí?
Yeah, give me the transition for my showing.
There you go. It's this one, right? Peraí, não, peraí, vai pôr, peraí. Tá aqui, Gonçalo screen share. There you go.
So guys, as André is saying, our idea is to give you more capabilities within the management of the load. We know that many of the softwares and the providers out there, they have their own system. My expertise tells me that the majority of the time they don't have all the full capacity to get out what we need from it. So in that sense, we try to build something more in-depth, hybrid. And right now, what we built besides the Excel, so the Excel is really powerful in every calculation metric that we want to build. If we want to do some different metrics, we can just simply create the new column and everything. But sometimes it's nice to have it more an interface and interactive dashboarding, which is what Power BI basically excels. So what we do is the same Excel that you are doing all the stuff that Andrea just showed is linked to this Power BI. So it's not, we have the one Excel for one kind of reporting and then the Power BI is a different thing. No, whenever you work on that Excel, if you follow some of the instructions that we say on the following under the course, you can keep up both ends working, and you can rely more on one or the other. So basically, it's a very simple dashboarding when we have the daily report. In this case, what we do is we select the day that we have the training. We can have only, for instance, only one session and not include the RTP. Again, this data is from the Excel that Andrea just showed. So we can here compare the session that we had compared to the match. So as I change here, it will tell me, okay, we did 47% of the time, only 33% of the volume of our match average, and per metric. So every high speed running, we did only 80%. But imagine that this training actually was a -3. So I want to go here and I want to compare with our -3 goals, which were the references that Andrea just mentioned when you were on the table. So basically on the -3, we can see that we were short on volume. I thought we did a lot of high speed running for this session. So this was short on volume, but high on high speed running. Again, these are all changeable. When you go to the Excel, you can set up your own goals for a -3, -4, -2, -1. So we can then come here, then we can see here which was the goal as a white line, and the yellow line is the average of the team. So this way we can see that clearly on individual who was above and lower the goal as more team goal in this sense. So a very quick, and then you have a quick table, just to summarize, quick table with all the metrics. And here you can pretty much export this very quickly. If we go here, export to PDF, and this would create the PDF, okay? If we want to just show here, I would just hide the other ones and I would be able to export this. So again, for same thing for the drills, how was the drills? If I want to see which position was more demanded, so I can break down the drills by position and so on, and by player. So if I open full, yeah, now I have, okay, these guys in this drill perform this amount of training. The match report, so as we have here, the match report, this is team values, and then we go from team values first, second halves, and then individual data. And basically per metric, and again by a table. So simple, quick reports, a weekly overview when we select more than a week instead of just a session, and see and compare it to the week we needed and see if that was what we wanted for the week. So again, and a wellness report. So basically, this is something that you can apply to your Excel. Just refresh Power BI, and over there you're going to have everything that you might need just in a quick way in Power BI. I hope this is for the majority of you the beginning of, if you want to go down that path of doing a little bit extra thing with your data, and this would be the first, I hope, some first step for you guys.
Guys, so breaking it down here, we understand that for some of you guys, if you look at the numbers, you look at the Power BI, you look at Excel, what you see is numbers and colors and bars and charts. But this is actually what we do in the course. What we do is you break down everything on step-by-step classes. The course is very consumable, so it's I think the longest class is maybe 25 minutes or 22 minutes. So we already set it up this way so that you don't get bored with 1 hour classes. Everything is straight up. If you have any issue, if you acquire the course but you have any issues afterwards, you can contact us directly. Say I have a problem with this or that, or if people start telling us that we need more explanation on whatever topic, we'll go there, rearrange everything that might be needed. Again, this is a living course. It's something that we hope that we can use to grow together, not just for us. And in our experience, me and Gonçalo doing a lot of online courses, we've been growing a lot together with all of the people that come in, because there's discussion groups, discussion topics, and all of this is very enriching. Not just a single closed course where you do the course, you get the certificate and download the Excel and bye bye. So this is not what happens. Above all, again, if you're not happy, of course you have a couple days guarantee that you can ask for your money back. So this will never be an issue. We have absolutely no interest in you guys acquiring something that you don't think is useful for you. So you have the option of asking for your money back if you find that the course does not suit your needs. Other than that, I think we are done. If you have any questions on the course or anything else, you guys are on the group. You can send me a direct message. Send me a direct message, no problem. If you have any questions, you have any issues, you're not sure about something on the course, you're not sure if it's going to be useful. I'm not an Excel guy. I'm not a numbers guy. Ask me any questions. Everything is made for people like us, because I'll tell you guys for sure, I'm not a numbers guy, right? A lot of what I'm learning, I learned with Gonzalo, but right nowadays, you want to be part of the coaching staff, you need to get this shit straight. You want to be, making decisions with the coaches. You want to be part of the process. You need, as a fitness coach or as a performance coach, you need to know how to work with this. There's no way around it right now, right? So that's why we decided to create the course, because we had a lot of people asking us for this, and we felt the same problem in our skin. And we felt, guys, we cannot go around this. We need to learn nowadays. You need to learn how to work with this stuff. So that's why we decided to create. And above all, guys, we hope that the class was useful. And if you acquire the course, of course, we hope that you do, that you find it useful as well. Again, I already shared the link here, and you can scan this QR code to get the link. But I will also share the link in the group. And I hope to see you guys around. Any questions? I don't think so. It's all good, all good, all good. Gonçalo, querias partilhar mais alguma coisa? Gonçalo, you want to share something else?
I think that's it. I hope happy trainings for everyone, and that the season that is incoming go well.
Yeah, guys, good luck for the season, and acquire the course before the season so that you're refreshed and you know how to work with your GPS and how to make better decisions, guys. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Any questions, contact me directly through the message. You have my number on WhatsApp. Feel free to text. See you guys. Thank you, Gonçalo. See you next time.
Bye. Thank you.